Hello everyone, this is me Dr. Neelofar Kohri and we are here with the third part of Aristotle's Poetics. We have been discussing the summary of the treatise Poetics by Aristotle. So we have already discussed chapter 1st to 3rd, and we have seen that how Aristotle differentiates between various kinds of poetries and how he uh, establishes the superiority of tragedy over comedy. So now this third part is based on the summary of the description of or discussion of chapter 4 and chapter 5. So let's begin. Let's see what Aristotle has hidden in the next chapters. Uh, Aristotle suggests that it is human nature to write and appreciate poetry. We are by nature imitative creatures that learn and excel by imitating others, and we naturally take delight in works of imitation. So, I think Aristotle is very right when he says that human beings naturally learn by imitation, and we enjoy learning that way by imitating others. Like we copy someone, maybe our teachers, maybe our role models, and the children or the small kids, they follow their or imitate their parents or whoever they see them, uh, they see. So and it is easier to learn by imitation than to be learned by other ways, and it makes it quite interesting also. So he suggests that as it is human nature to learn by imitation, it is again a human nature to write and appreciate poetry. When will we see something in the nature, we will try to write, try to put it into words, and we will definitely enjoy that, appreciate that. As evidence of the claim that we delight in imitation, he points out that we are fascinated by a representation of dead bodies or disgusting animals, even though the things themselves would repel us. So, when people are trying to imitate the things which we actually repel, or we actually hate, or we actually disgust, are uh, objects of fascination when we recreate something or we uh, represent something. Okay, so the representation of dead bodies or disgusting animals is much more interesting than to present anything beautiful. Aristotle suggests that we can also learn by examining representations and imitations of things, and that learning is one of the greatest pleasure there is. Rhythm and harmony also come naturally to us, so that poetry gradually evolved out of our improvisations with these media. So, first we learn by examining and representing the things which we are imitating, and then we learn how to represent it, how to put it before the audience, and then we come to know that how uh, what are the greatest pleasures. And rhythm and harmony, they come naturally when we start imitating. They come to us because they are inbuilt, and they are the objects which are required for writing good poetry. So, as poetry evolved, a sharp division developed between serious writers who would write about noble characters in lofty hymns and panegyrics, and meaner writers who would write about ignoble characters in demeaning invectives. So, as poetry evolved or as poetry developed, they started a division, sharp division between serious writers who would have written about noble characters, about the characters which are not common like us, and they used to write lofty hymns, very heavy or very grave kind of serious kind of hymns, poetries or panegyrics, the speeches, the loud speeches. They used to write about that, and the meaner writers who would write about ignoble characters in demeaning invectives. Like the serious writers or the elevated writers or the sublime writers would be writing about lofty themes, serious characters, lofty characters, and they would write hymns and panegyrics. And the meaner writers who are not that much capable of creating perfect imitation, they would write about ignoble characters, the ridiculous characters, and in a demeaning invectives in a ways that are not equal in presentation to the lofty writers or serious writers. Then he says that tragedy and comedy are later developments that are the grandest representation of their respective tradition. So the tragedy of the lofty tradition and comedy of mean tradition. So later, when there were divisions between tragedies and comedies, and there were developments of thoughts and representations of tragedy and comedy. Tragedy follows the lofty tradition and comedy follows the mean tradition. Means the serious is being treated by tragic writers, and the trifles or ridiculous were treated by comic writers, comedy writers. Now Aristotle stops short of saying that tragedy has achieved its complete and finished form. Okay, how it reaches to its final form, which is before us now. He lists 4 innovations in the development from improvised dithyrambics towards the tragedies of his day. That how in the beginning they were like so much impoverished, they were not that rich, they were not that refined kind of poetries or the tragedies, and they were simple imperfect dithyrambics or lyrical poetries, and now how they have become the tragedies of the present day. He talks about that development also. So Aristotle says, first dithyrambics were sung in honor of Dionysus, god of wine, by a chorus of around 50 men and boys. So the central character is Dionysus, who is the god of wine, and a chorus of 50 men and boys often accompanied a narrator. So there was a narrator who was speaking or singing in praise of Dionysus, who was the god of wine, and there were again 50 men and boys who were accompanied by one narrator, who is one. Aeschylus is responsible for the first innovation of this kind, reducing the number of the chorus and introducing a second actor on stage. Then Aeschylus he made it more refined, and he started. Okay, so there was Aeschylus. He is responsible for the first innovation. He made the first innovation, and he reduced the number of chorus and introduced one more actor on the stage along with the narrator. Earlier there was one character or one actor, that was the narrator, and 50 chorus, and now he reduced the number of the chorus and he introduced one more actor, that is the second actor on the stage, and which made dialogue the central focus of the poem. And the poem was now in spite of being sung in chorus, it is now in the form of conversation between or in the form of dialogue between two characters. Now second innovation was done by Sophocles, who added a third actor and also introduced background scenery. So first it was a simple dithyramb with the narrator and with a group of 50 chorus who was singing in the praise of god of wine, Dionysus. Then the first innovation was made by Aeschylus. He introduced one actor along with the narrator and reduced the number of chorus. Then second innovation was made by Sophocles, who added one more character along with the narrator and the second actor. He added one more actor, and he introduced background scenery also to make it more beautiful, to make it more interesting, to make it more elevated and give it a look also. Okay, so that people can get attracted towards watching the tragedy. Otherwise, just seeing something as dull as the real life is not that attractive and that captivating. So Sophocles made this change. The third change developed an air of seriousness. In the third innovation, we don't know who are responsible writers for that, but it developed an air of seriousness. Now tragedy has become more serious, and the meter changed from a trochaic rhythm. Okay, earlier the meter we have read into our previous classes what are the meters and what are the various types of meters. So trochaic is a meter which is suitable for dancing, was replaced or substituted by the iambic meter or the iambic rhythm, which is closer to the natural rhythms of conversational speech. So what is the third change? The change of the rhythm. The first change was the change in the number of chorus and the number of actors. In the second change, there were 3 actors instead of 2, and a background scenery was also introduced. In the third change or the third innovation, the meter was changed or the rhythm was changed, which was moved from the trochaic to iambic, and iambic is more closer to the natural rhythms of conversational speech. And the fourth change and the fourth and final ultimate change, which according to while reaching to the time of Aristotle, is that tragedy developed a plurality of episodes or acts. Earlier there was only one single poem or one single act or one single episode. Now there were episodes and acts. So these are the 4 innovations of tragedy. Now next, Aristotle elaborates on what he means when he says that comedy deals with the people worse than us ourselves, saying that comedy deals with the ridiculous. When he says, when we have already discussed into our previous lecture, into the summary of chapter 1st to 3rd, that tragedy deals with characters who are better than us, better than the real life, and tragedy deals with characters who are worse than us or worse than the common life or common people. So Aristotle, by what does he mean by worse than us, or what does he mean by lower than us? He means ridiculous. And what is ridiculous? He defines ridiculous as a kind of ugliness that does no harm to anybody else. Okay, the ridiculous is not harmful for anyone, but it creates a kind of humor, a kind of laughter. Aristotle is able only to give a very sketchy account of the origins of comedy, because it was not generally treated with the same respect as tragedy, and so there are few records of innovations that led to its present form, that how comedy reached into the present form. He does not talk about it, he is not interested with it, because his main concern is with tragedy, okay, and epic poetry, so he doesn't discuss it much. Okay, while both tragedy and epic poetry deal with lofty subjects in a grand style of verse, Aristotle notes 3 significant differences between the two genres. So, tragedy and epic poetry, they both deal with lofty subjects, serious subjects, and they are grand style of verse, something which is extraordinary. But there are 3 significant differences, and what are these differences? Let us see. First, tragedy is told in a dramatic rather than narrative form and employs several different kinds of verse, while epic poetry employs only one verse. So, tragedy is not a story. It's a story. It's a drama. It cannot be told in the story like the fiction does or like the novel does. Rather, it is acted. It is meant for to be acted, not to be told. So it is in form of drama, not a form of narration, dramatic rather than narrative, and it is a combination of several verses, several poems, and there can be a variety of poems. But epic poetry is one long single poem that is written in length. Okay, so that is the first difference. The second is that the action of tragedy is usually confined to a single day, and so the tragedy itself is usually much shorter than an epic poem. We have seen that epic poems are written in books, in 12 books, in 15 books, in 30 books, in 24 books, in 100 books. Okay, so they are written in so many books, while tragedies, they are written in 4 act or 5 act. That is also a very not very lengthy acts, because the reason is that tragedy is usually confined to one single day, one revolution of sun, or let's say 24 hours. So it is natural that it cannot be of that length. In one day, how much you are going to write. Okay, then the epic poem. Well, third, while tragedy has all the elements that are characteristics of poetry, it also has some additional elements that are unique to it alone, unique to the tragedy alone. So, tragedy has epic poetry in itself, but its features are more rich than in capacity than the epic poetry, and they are much more elevated than epic poetry, and it contains additional elements that are unique features of tragedy, and it has nothing to do with epic poetry. So in these two chapters, Aristotle talks about the differences between tragedy and epic poetry, differences between comedy and tragedy. He also talks about the development of tragedy into its present form, and Aristotle talks that how tragedies are imitated and how imitation is interesting to the audience or to the readers. So I hope um, I have been able to, I have been successful to making it clear to all of you. If you have any doubts, you can ask me into the comment box, or you can directly message me on my WhatsApp number. So let's meet with the next video or next lecture on Aristotle's Poetics. That is going to be part 4. Then that would be the summary of the chapter 6. We have discussed 5 chapters so far. So thank you very much for watching. Keep listening.